On Tech News Today, new phones from Motorola and OnePlus, new customer satisfaction ratings for social networks, and a new store on Amazon that sells crowd-funded gadgets. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, July 28th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card when you get a loan. And by Intel. Small business owners can't afford to choose between A or B. If both help your business, you want A and B. With Intel-powered 2-in-1s, you get performance and mobility, power and freedom. That's the power of and. Experience it at smallbusiness.intel.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgin. Our co-anchor today is After Nine's content czar, Joe Panettiere. Hey, Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Mike, how have you been?
I've been great. I've been having a good time here. The weather's been lovely here in California. And eventually we'll have rain even. So we may survive. Actually, the state may survive. But in the meantime, we have lots and lots of news. You know, all these new phones come out. We're going to be talking about them in a minute, Joe. And it's really kind of, this is the time of year when I kind of feel glad that I'm using an iPhone right now. I tend to go back and forth between an Android phone and an iPhone. But when you're on Android, it drives you nuts because there's the new hotness comes out every couple of months. And sometimes you get two or three in a row. And it's just the sense of like, you know, of FOMO or whatever you want to call it, is palpable. And it's just great to just have a company like Apple just set the, you know, you don't have to think about the next iPhone until, you know, a long time. And so you can just say, oh, yeah, I've got the latest iPhone. That's never the case. You can never be quite satisfied if you're on Android.
Yeah, you know, the other thing I do like about all these phones being introduced is I do think it continues to inspire Apple, quite frankly. So you get these nudges every few weeks and months in the Android world of these nudges of innovation, and that pushes Apple along with their, you know, major releases every year. So I'm curious to see how each one of our guests today talks up or down these new releases.
I have the feeling there's going to be a lot of talking up, but that's just prediction. Why don't we jump into it? Motorola unveiled new products today. One is called the Moto X Style, but it'll be called the Moto X Pure Edition in the United States. The company also announced a phone called the Moto Play and also a new Moto G device. Roger Chang is an executive editor for CNET News and joins us now. Hey, Roger, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. You were at the event this morning, and you came sprinting back to your office to be on the show. I appreciate that. The Moto X Pure Edition will have universal LTE banding. What the heck does that mean, and why is that interesting?
It's really interesting if you're a U.S. customer because universal LTE banding means you can jump onto any carrier you want and make sure you have ensure that you have the fastest access to the network. So no matter if you're on Sprint or AT&T or Verizon, you have access to the fastest LTE network. And that's something that not even the iPhone can do.
And what about sort of the camera discussion here? Are there new innovations there? I'm hearing about the Moto X style cameras, but I'd love to learn more. What's going on there?
Yeah, one of the biggest weaknesses with the last Moto X was the camera wasn't as great as people would want it to be. And so they've really stepped up their game there. There's a 21 megapixel camera. It's got a dual flash, one with color correction. So it boasts having the most color accurate photos out there. And so they say this is an industry-leading camera. We'll see whether the tests confirm it, but they definitely are high on the improvements that they've made to it.
So I just want to be super clear about the difference between the Pure Edition and the Style. Now, they're essentially they have the same cameras, I would imagine, and only the U.S. has the LTE banding. What are the differences exactly between the international and the U.S. version of this phone?
Right. It was actually a little confusing. I had to ask a Motorola person, and they didn't quite know right away. So it's understandable why you'd be confused. The main difference, and it's essentially the same phone. The U.S. edition is just called the Pure Edition, but it is essentially the Moto X style. But the key difference is the version that's sold in the US will have that universal LTE banding. The version sold outside of the US, if you take it here to the US, you'll only be able to get access to certain carriers. I think it's AT&T and T-Mobile. So the one sold overseas has access to fewer LTE networks. But essentially, they're the same phone.
Okay. Hey, Roger, if I'm interested in this and I want to either see some of the various configurations or maybe even make a purchase, can I really get into the customization mode here using their Moto Maker site?
Yeah, that's their big advantage. That's what they're pushing, is for people to go to Moto Maker and really tweak and customize the phone to their heart's desire. Whether it's material, whether it's color, you get to. That's sort of the advantage. That's what Motorola's main selling point is, right? You can tweak it to your heart's content.
Now, when Motorola, when it was under Google, first came out with this announcement, when they were leading up to the big Moto X, the first Moto X announcement, they held a secret sort of like meeting with a tiny number of journalists from Silicon Valley at the Googleplex in Mountain View. I was there, Leo was there, and they made a huge deal about the Moto Maker site. They're like, oh my gosh, we've been working on this for 2 years. We've revolutionized how phones will be made in the future. We've done all these complicated things. There's like, we have supercomputers working. It was like a big, big deal. They really made a big deal out of it. Everybody was oohing and awing, saying, wow, that's amazing. But now Lenovo's taken it over, and they're just continuing with this Moto Maker thing, but they're not manufacturing them in the U.S. at the Google-created place, are they? Are they making these in China? No. Where is the Moto Maker manufacturing taking place exactly?
So they shut down the U.S. plant last year, and they have moved their manufacturing to China, and I believe Brazil as well. They're sourcing more locally, depending on what market they're trying to address. But yeah, the experiment with having the manufacturing facility in the U.S., I mean, it turns out it is more expensive, and they couldn't really afford to keep that going and turn a profit. So yeah, it's interesting. Also, the change that they're going with this year is they're not working with carriers, and I think that's actually the biggest difference. Is they're actually trying to sell this phone directly online or through Best Buy or Amazon, and not go through the traditional carrier like AT&T or Verizon.
And Roger, is that because Lenovo doesn't have the relationships with U.S. carriers?
No, it's interesting because Motorola does have an existing relationship. They build these Droid phones for Verizon, so they have very good relationships with the U.S. carrier. They're making the argument that this is sort of the way people are going to buy phones in the future, especially as we're going off subsidies. People are realizing how much these phones actually cost. This Moto X sells for $400. That's a significant discount to an iPhone, which off contract is $650. So it's definitely a change in tack that they're trying. Whether or not it actually pays off is still unclear.
Hey, Roger, what do you think of the overall Lenovo ownership here and strategy? And it's sort of a two-part question. There's sort of that transition phase, right, of this technology, of the mobile technology shifting over from Google to Lenovo. So there's the transition. And then there's the longer term story in terms of how this is going to play out. What do you think of those two segments, those two pieces so far in terms of the transition and then the longer term, how this may play out under Lenovo's ownership?
You're definitely seeing the transition phase right now. Lenovo has promised to sort of keep their hands off of Motorola, sort of allow Motorola to do their own thing, to keep their own strategy. And today's announcement sort of shows that that's the case so far. And remember, these are the first products being released under Lenovo or under Lenovo's control. And so they're essentially, they follow the same kind of strategy. It's a pure Android phone. There are minimal tweaks to it, minimal software tweaks. There are just a few sort of apps and features that are added to enhance the Android experience. But for the most part, the strategy remains the same. Longer term, though, it's we'll have to see whether or not these phones continue to be a success. I know Moto G has been successful. I don't know how successful Moto X has been as a flagship phone in relation to an iPhone or a Galaxy S. So I think longer term, the success of these phones will sort of weigh on whether or not there'll be some more dramatic changes or not.
You mentioned the Moto G. They also rolled out the Play. They also rolled out something called the Moto Pulse and Moto Surround, which you said before the show started that those weren't really all that interesting, kind of vanilla generic accessories. Of these four products, though, the four secondary products, Play, G, the Pulse, the Surround, any surprises, anything interesting in there that we want to talk about before we let you go?
No, not necessarily surprises. I mean, I think the Moto G continues to impress me. The price remains $180 off contract, which is an amazingly low price when you consider that they keep cramming new features and keeping the price the same. And just relative to a standard premium phone, and I know they're not really the same category, but if you're paying $650 for an iPhone or a Galaxy S phone, the notion of paying $180 for a smartphone is pretty amazing. And I think that's why they're so successful in countries like Brazil, these emerging markets where they're a lot more price sensitive. It's definitely sort of a big target for Motorola.
Well, the Moto X was a really exciting phone when it came out for two reasons. The first is that it could do something that nothing else and no one else could do, which is that it could be just sitting on your night table and you'd just talk to it. It would wake up and answer your questions. Nowadays, that's a banality. We have the Amazon Echo. We have several phones do that kind of thing. Our browsers do it now. So that's kind of a banality. The other thing was it had interesting materials on the back. They promised initially that there would be wood. They eventually came out with wood backing ones. Now OnePlus has wood plus other materials. So I think, Roger, you might agree that this is a great phone, but they're not going to be there's no way to be as different now as they were when the first Moto X came out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the advantages that they first put out have been sort of covered. I mean, I do think Moto Maker still is a key advantage. It's sort of a site, a portal for you to go and tweak the phone the way you'd want it. But yes, it's a lot of those differentiating factors are now no longer the case. And it's really, I think at this point, it still positions itself as the Android phone for Android fans, right? This is sort of the pure experience. There are only some minor tweaks here and there, but you're mostly getting Google's Android experience. So, for some people, that's enough.
All right. Well, you can catch up with Roger Chang at cnet.com and also on Twitter at Roger W. Chang. Chang is spelled C-H-E-N-G. Thank you so much for joining us today, Roger.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Got some more news for you coming right up. But first, let's talk about money. We're talking about crowdfunded products. If you have a small business and you have a product idea and you want to start a business and start a new product, one way to do it is you can go to crowdfunding sites. The problem is that there are lots of obligations with that. There are even more obligations if you get venture capital because you're going to have other people with their fingers in the cookie jar telling you what to do, putting pressure on you to compromise on quality or whatever. If you want to start a really small business, Prosper is the way to fund it because you retain control over the entire company, over the entire product. You don't have all these obligations to investors or crowdfunding contributors. It's a financially and socially rewarding site because you go in there and you put in your project that you need to fund, and you can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days, and then investors will invest in you and your project. From a loan perspective, it's fantastic. Low fixed rates, super fast and easy online application. I mean, this is like by far the easiest way to borrow money in terms of just how easy and fast it is. And there are no teaser rates or hidden fees. It's very straightforward, and that is rare today in any sort of financial service of any kind. There's so much red tape and fine print, not with Prosper. It's very, very straightforward. And that's, this is not a startup, folks. They were a startup years and years ago, but now they are an established leader in this category, which they invented. They have 2 million members. They've facilitated $4 billion in loans and empowered 250,000 people. And for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers a $50 Visa gift card with your low-interest loan. You can get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days and a $50 Visa gift card. So go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer just for Twit viewers and listeners. The Chinese company OnePlus unveiled its OnePlus 2 smartphone last night. Unlike the OnePlus 1, the new phone runs a nearly standard version of Android. The older model ran Cyanogen. There's some other changes, too. Nathan Oliveris-Giles is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks for having me on.
I know you also wrote about the Motorola announcement. Sorry we didn't have you in on that discussion as well. But can you tell us about this OnePlus 2 phone, the size, specs, price, anything of interest that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, it really looks like a great handset, and kind of like what Motorola is doing with the Moto X and offering it for just $400. The OnePlus, this is their thing. They offer a flagship quality phone at a low price. So the OnePlus 2 starts at $300 with 16 gigabytes of storage and 3 gigabytes of RAM, and then it'll go up to $380 if you want 64 gigabytes of storage and 4 gigs of RAM, which is, again, a discount. I mean, if you look at jumping up between 16 and 32 gigabytes for an iPhone or a Galaxy or really anything else out there, they charge you an extra $100. So these guys are definitely going for, I guess calling it a bargain price is fair, but it's not like a bargain cheap phone, maybe like the Moto G.
Good to see you again. Hey, quick question for you in terms of carriers here. Is the OnePlus 2 available from carriers, or is it something that you buy outright on your own?
No, OnePlus is just doing direct sales. So Motorola with the Moto X is selling through Amazon. They're selling through Best Buy. They're selling through their own website. Eventually, actually, the Moto X is going to come out in carriers. At least that's what they told me. It's launching in its pure edition just for the US. But OnePlus doesn't do any of that. They just sell through their website. And there's kind of a tricky system to it. You have to go onto their website. You have to request an invite. And then when you get your invite, basically you're placed in line to buy the phone. There's already more than 500,000 invites requested. And the company essentially does this as a way to kind of keep up with demand and kind of, really understand, what demand looks like, how many phones they should make. I spoke with one of their co-founders last week. He stopped by my office and let me look at the phone and get kind of an early look at it. And he said that last year, they didn't really know what they were doing. It was their first year, the first time they ever sold a phone. They didn't know what the demand would be. So they tried this invite system, and demand was way more than they anticipated, and they weren't able to keep up with demand. And people were selling invites on eBay for like $400 and stuff like that. So people were paying a premium to get this phone because it's really nice hardware. This year, he says they've gotten it under control. They're going to have it all together, and they should be able to have enough invites for everybody who wants one, and they should be able to make them and deliver them timely. So hopefully, when you're actually able to cash in these invites and make the purchase on August 11th, if you want to buy the phone, hopefully you'll get it within a few weeks instead of having to wait months or something like that.
I still think that they discovered that the invitation system is kind of part of the identity of this phone, and they got them tons of press. So I think they sort of walked ass backwards into this this marketing gimmick, and now they can't let go of it, which, it works, whatever sells phones. Now, this is going to have some really interesting style swap cover materials. Theoretically, we've heard rumors, they've been taking polls and so on about what people want, but the leading contenders for the back of this thing are bamboo, ceramic, denim, leather, mother of pearl, nylon quartz, rosewood. Are we really going to see these kinds of backs on the OnePlus 2? I mean, some of these don't sound like they're very good, dispensers of heat, for example.
Yeah, it's a really great question. One of the things that they've done, maybe it's partially because of all the hype that they've generated with the invites, is really kind of have an engaged user base. They have a really popular forum on their website, and the folks who like their phones really take part in kind of having an ongoing conversation with the company. And it's a bit unique. But when they stopped by my office last week, they stopped by with the regular version, which has kind of like a almost sandstone velvety-like finish. It's really nice. Same material they had on the OnePlus One. And then they stopped by with a bamboo, like a darker kind of cherry wood, and then like a black stained wood, and then a Kevlar plastic. It kind of almost looked like carbon fiber. And they said those backs will definitely come out, and those will be on sale. I think the backs will be about $30 each or something like that. So pretty reasonably priced if you're in a swap in it. They're not doing the bright colors like Motorola is doing with the Moto X Play and the Moto G, where we can swap those out with like, neon yellow and, fuchsia and, all that stuff. But they're going for more of like an understated, more mature look. And yeah, they say they're coming on the way. Mother of pearl and all that stuff, I don't know, but they'll definitely have wood and plastic.
Hey, Nathan, what about the software on this? Mike mentioned at the beginning of this report that it's similar to stock Android. Are there any specialized apps or anything that OnePlus 2 or OnePlus has written for the OnePlus 2 that is unique or special?
Yeah, that's a great question. Last year they went with Cyanogen, and now they're calling it Oxygen OS, and it's actually their own version of Android. And it really, really looks and works like stock Android, which I love. That's my personal favorite version of Android. But they did make some tweaks. There's little stuff like being able to just, drag down your finger anywhere on the display, and it'll pull down that notifications tray that normally you have to reach all the way to the top to get to. That now is a lot easier to get to because of that little tweak, right? It's a very small change, but stuff like that kind of matters. There's other changes. If you'll be able to swipe in from the left on your main home screen, and that's normally where you'd pull up Google Now on a stock Android phone. To get Google Now, you have to do like a long press of your home button. But on their Oxygen OS, you'll be able to swipe that in, and it will show you a list of your favorite apps. Well, not really your favorite apps, like the apps you use the most, and then the contacts that you reach out to the most. The idea here is that just by the natural use of your phone, you're kind of making a decision as to what you're doing the most on your phone. So that stuff should show up there. And it's a slightly different approach. HTC has tried something similar with like a news, feed in that position. A lot of folks, kind of try and play with something a little more personalized there. But that's really their biggest thing. They also have like a dark mode, which, instead of having like a white background for all of your apps in the app tray, you'll get a black background. You can choose that. I think that's something that Google's actually building into Android for the next version. But there's a lot of small tweaks like that, which is pretty cool. And then, one of the big things that they offer is the ability to just flash the phone right out the box. You don't really have to make any tweaks. It's kind of, they encourage modding. So if you don't like it, you can, flash it to CyanogenMod or all sorts of different other operating systems out there. But it looks pretty great. There's lots of on-screen gestures, and you can actually like trace on your finger the shape of a flashlight, and the flashlight will turn on and things like that.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
So when the OnePlus One came out, the shocking fact about it was the disparity between how great of a phone it was and how low the price was. Everybody was stunned and shocked that you could get a phone that was that high end for a price that was just under $300. Is this phone gonna, and since then lots of phones have come down in price, down around the same level. Is this phone gonna have the same kind of shock value in terms of the price versus performance, or have they sort of lost that edge?
I think there's still a little bit of shock value there. I don't think it's as dramatic as last year because, like you said, a lot of phones are cheaper than they were before, right? Google is, they had the Nexus 5 for a while at a low price. The Nexus 6 now is pretty cheap. Motorola's new phones are pretty low, and they're all flagship-worthy handsets, right? So I think what you're seeing is more of a larger idea across the industry that, hey, people want really quality hardware, and we're going to have to cut the prices down closer to cost. What OnePlus told me was they're selling this phone very low above cost. Apple's profit margins are insanely high, and I think anyone who pays attention to this industry knows they're making a killing when it comes to profits. But Samsung, LG, Motorola, Sony, pretty much everybody else really isn't reaping in those profits. So it's not quite a race to the bottom. You're still kind of getting what you pay for to a certain extent, but the prices are coming down, which I think is a good thing for consumers because you can really get a lot more bang for your buck these days. So I think there will be less of a shock value, but if you actually have used the OnePlus One, it was one of our favorite phones of last year, and at the Journal amongst all of our critics and stuff. And the OnePlus 2 looked fantastic. It's a really, really great phone. The build quality is outstanding. And, even still, Motorola, even with all the power of Lenovo behind them, even with moving all the manufacturing to China, they're still charging more than these guys are for their handset. And if you look at it spec for spec, really it's right there. It's just as good as anything else. Of course, we have to try these things. We have to review them. But it looks like it's going to be another really, really worthy competitor. And then one maybe downside would be that it only has a 1080p display instead of going above that like the S6 is doing and all of this stuff. But the display is gorgeous. I looked at it, and it's really, really, really nice. So I don't think most people will even notice that it maybe has, a few less couple hundred pixels or something.
All right. Well, that's all great news. You mentioned the distribution in the industry of profits and margins. The most recent numbers are that there are approximately 1,000 companies making smartphones right now, most of them in China. And Apple itself is making 92% of the profits. So that's the distribution right there. Apple makes money and everybody else makes phones. Nathan Oliveros-Giles is at WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at NATEOG. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nathan.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. Amazon today introduced a new store called Launchpad, which sells products made by startups. Ben Fox-Rubin is a tech reporter for CNET and joins us to tell all about it. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for being here. Now, why launch a store for startups? Do consumers care whether or not a product comes from a startup or an established company?
I think with startup companies, it's a way to show perhaps that Amazon is looking out for the little guy. Amazon does get knocked around a lot, particularly in the book publishing business, for pushing its weight around quite a lot. So maybe if they show that they're doing a special page specifically for startups, that's a good way to build some goodwill with the startup community and show that they are trying to help some folks out.
Hey, Ben, can you give us an example or a few examples of the types of startups that Amazon is promoting here? And then part two of the question is, are there any clues or hints that maybe Amazon itself may invest in some of these companies, potentially?
It's hard to say whether they would invest in these companies. Right now, they're teaming up with about 25 different VCs, crowdfunding platforms, and also accelerators to get these different products. There are only about 200 of them right now, but you'd be able to find the Sphero, that kind of rolly robotic ball that you can remote control with your smartphone. They also have Casper mattresses. There's also this thing called Fresh Paper, which this guy invented that you can add into your produce drawer, and it'll keep your produce. It'll help your produce stay good for more time, a couple more days, I guess. So I haven't tried it out yet, but it sounded pretty interesting.
Now, besides just selling these devices and offering a place where startups can sell, find a big audience, presumably, is Amazon doing any value add? For example, are they helping with delivery problems or reliability or some of the other issues that plague crowdfunded companies?
Yes. Yeah. So with Launchpad specifically, they're offering marketing assistance, and they're also offering help with distribution, which is pretty important. There's this thing called Fulfillment by Amazon, where Amazon will bring in your products into their international warehouses and be able to ship them for you. So for a small startup, the possibility that they'd be able to bring in their products to people within 2 days for Amazon Prime members sounds pretty compelling for a small company that may not have a distribution network. So those are some of the big value adds on top of what Amazon proposes, which is you come to our platform. We have millions and millions of people that come to Amazon.com every day. So now you're going to be able to get your products right up in front there.
Hey, Ben, as I look at this Launchpad effort, it's easy to imagine many of these products someday on physical store shelves across the U.S. at other retailers. But I'm wondering if there's a virtual play here. And what I mean by that is, Amazon's got Amazon Web Services, they've got app stores, et cetera. Might we begin to see online services, cloud services, et cetera, as part of Launchpad? Or do you think that's a completely different play?
So, Joe, you mean specifically that they would offer web services to the startups that are on the site? You mean that?
No, I mean, yeah, well, it could be that, but I mean more a matter of actual third-party web services being promoted, startup companies that are in the web services market, in the consumer applications market, et cetera, being promoted through Launchpad.
Potentially. Right now, it's really specifically focused on gadgets and not services. So if it takes off, if it does well, Amazon will continue to iterate and add more stuff to it. Like I said before, it's only about 200 products at this point, so they're obviously going to add more to it. Whether they add services, that could be interesting. I mean, they're really trying to build out their services side a little bit more. They created this thing called Amazon Home Services earlier this year, where you can get a plumber or an electrician. So it's entirely possible. I think what Amazon tends to do is that they like to throw spaghetti up on the wall, see what sticks. And if it does do anything, then they'll keep building up on it.
All right. Well, I'm looking at this Amazon Launchpad site. Excuse me. And I'm looking at this product called a Growler Works UKEG 64 Copper Craft Beer Growler. I need this. I don't know what it does or why there's a giant dial at the bottom, but I definitely need this. It looks like a growler that has like a tap on it. Wow.
Hey, you save $4. That's fantastic.
$4. That's amazing. It's at the low price of only $145 and free shipping.
There was one that I thought was pretty interesting that I mentioned in my story, which was this Bluetooth speaker, but the top of it levitates. So it levitates off of its base, which I thought was really, I mean, it looked different. I don't remember exactly what the price is, but it was a couple $100s. So hopefully you really, really like it if you're going to pay that much for it. But I don't know. It sounded interesting.
It's $299. It's called the Mars Levitation Bluetooth Speaker. It looks pretty gnarly. Is that the one you're talking about, Ben?
Yes.
Now I just need a levitating couch and a levitating TV, and it'll be just like Wall-E or something like that, and a giant soda. I'll be all set. All right, Ben Fox Rubin is at cnet.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben Fox Rubin. Thank you so much for joining us again, Ben, on Tech News Today.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Believe it or not, user satisfaction with social media websites is growing. One major reason is that Facebook is now ranking much higher than it used to, according to a new report from the American Customer Satisfaction Index. Facebook has risen from essentially the bottom and is now more or less in the middle of the pack, somewhere between Google+, which ranks higher than Facebook, and Twitter, which ranks lower. The highest ranked social network overall, according to the study, is Pinterest, and the lowest is LinkedIn. Joe Panettiere, why does Pinterest rank so high, do you think?
You know, maybe it's their creative approach to marketing where we don't feel like we're all getting spammed. And you know, you had mentioned that LinkedIn was the lowest ranked social media network. And just this morning or in the past few hours, I believe LinkedIn actually announced that they are going to be hitting our inboxes less frequently, which is a refreshing development. We'll see if that helps their rankings going forward.
Yeah, that's part of it. And I did see that report. They probably are responding to this report and trying to have some news other than, hey, we're at the bottom. We're number 12. Or
Things
whatever.
are looking up.
Exactly. Part of it, though, is just the nature of what each site is trying to accomplish. Pinterest is a sort of no compromises, no bummers, no bitter medicine, nothing. It's just like, I want this, I want that, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. It's just like, it's like super easy. It just goes down like sugar. And whereas LinkedIn is like, oh, you better work on your resume. You know, you feel the pressure of your career and like, you know, all this work you have to do. And so it's kind of a bummer what they're trying to tackle. So it's not quite fair. I do think it's interesting, though, that Facebook, which used to just be pummeled in these user satisfaction surveys, is actually rising. People are liking Facebook more than they used to, which is kind of unfortunate because they already have all the users. They're already completely dominating the world of social network, and now they have user satisfaction as well.
Yeah, they've come a long way. And, you know, I think we're all guilty of bashing Facebook, and meanwhile, we're all on it. So it's just sort of this strange addiction in terms of going there to say, I shouldn't be here.
Exactly. It's like having relatives in some sort of horrible town. You go to the town not because you like the town, but because the relatives are there. So
there you go.
Facebook. Although I have to admit, they have gotten better of late. Well, Business Insider has launched a new site called Tech Insider, which they say is a, quote, digital publication focused on science, tech, innovation, and culture. And you can check out the new site at techinsider.io. And we'll see how they do with that. It looks pretty good so far, if you ask me. Well, in product update news, Google Now just got a new feature today. The virtual assistant now lets you use voice commands to send a message through apps like WhatsApp, Viber, WeChat, Telegram, and Next Plus. Joe Panettiere, Next Plus?
Really? Next Plus?
Really?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, you know, what do you think so far, Mike, in terms of where Google is with all these virtual assistants and social? Can people keep track of everything Google is up to? And it seems like every few years they're bringing things together, and then every few years they're breaking things apart.
Yes, and you know, we were talking about spaghetti and whether or not, you know, it sticks to the wall, and that's an Amazon approach, but that's really the approach that Google invented. They try stuff. Sometimes they have multiple versions of a similar kind of service. They'll make acquisitions without killing the thing that they had that competed with the thing that they acquired. You know, they do all kinds of wacky, kooky stuff, and they're not shy about killing things that people are enjoying and using. And so, you know, you never know with Google. That's one of the reasons why they're so fun to cover as a journalist. But I am a little concerned about what is going to happen now that we have all these new integrations coming with Google Now. This is a sort of controlled by Google integration. In the future, there'll be essentially an API that'll enable third parties to just add their own integration into Google. And essentially what's going to happen is you and I will be standing there having a conversation, and next thing you know, a pizza and an Uber and all kinds of stuff is going to show up. We didn't even know we ordered it, you know, because this thing is going to be going off doing things based on voice commands. Already, when I say some things on the air, I'm triggering all kinds of, you know, Amazon Echoes out there and, like, you know, Google Now and Siri.
As long as you're not triggering DEFCON 5, we're good, Mike.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, well, it's coming, you know. But yeah, I think it is going to be confusing, and you know, with multiple, you know, Google Now has always been so straightforward and simple. You never lost control of it. If anything, it wasn't giving you enough information. But in the future, when it's opened, and of course when these other, you know, the Amazon Echoes is open as well. They've got an API out there that just been recently announced. You know, we're entering in a world where all these virtual assistants are going to have third-party integration, and it's really going to be difficult to know what is going on when, you know, when we talk and what's going to happen, what they're going to go off and do for us.
Yeah, you know, you're really signaling the age of machine to machine, right? So there's some sort of voice trigger, and then there's a runaway execution of that trigger where it's bouncing all over the cloud, all over devices, and it becomes a machine to machine process. You know, in a good world, maybe Uber does show up with a pizza. In a bad world, a lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah. And hopefully it'll be a pizza with the kind of toppings that I really like. So hopefully Amazon will know me well enough. You know, the Amazon Echo is kind of funny because you know, it can hear, like, it can hear me no matter where I am in the house. And I think the other day I was talking to my wife in a bedroom on the other side of the house, and I mentioned Alexa. There, I just triggered 1,000 Alexa, you know, Amazon Echoes, and I hear from the kitchen, I hear Alexa's voice saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question." It's like, you know, this is a private conversation, Alexa, you know, it's like, you mind your own business. Anyway, so what a world we're entering into. It's going to be pretty interesting. Well, we got some more news for you coming right up. But first, I want to talk about our other sponsor today, Intel, which makes these two-in-ones that are so, they make the guts of these two-in-one devices that are so fantastic. We all love tablets. We all love the power of laptops. And Intel's two-in-ones give you both the best of both worlds. It is so fantastic. Their Intel Core M processors give you faster speeds and really, truly brilliant graphics. And they're all about versatility and choice. You can go after the convertible style of two-in-one or the detachable style. So in the one case, you sort of flip around, in typical scenario, you flip around the keyboard and it becomes the back of a tablet, super easy and convenient. Or you take off the keyboard and you can just use it as a tablet. When you want to use a laptop again, you snap it back in there and you're off and running with a very, very powerful laptop. These devices are so great for small businesses. You know, instead of buying a bunch of tablets and a bunch of laptops separately, that's just wasteful. You can buy two-in-ones and you'll have the best of all possible worlds with these devices. Experience the power of and. Visit smallbusiness.intel.com and find out how Intel-powered two-in-ones can improve your small business. That's smallbusiness.intel.com. And we thank Intel for their support of Tech News Today. Well, in the Human Resources Department, Reddit's head of community, whose name is Jessica Moreno, has left the company, according to Recode. Moreno is the 4th top female employee to leave Reddit this month. There's no evidence that she's leaving because of discrimination or disagreement with the direction of Reddit. But on the other hand, Joe Panettiere, there's no evidence on the contrary either. They have a problem retaining women right now, apparently. And I hope they can turn around. But, you know, they've been out of the news for like a week now. But Reddit is in transition. They are struggling right now with internally.
Yeah, you know, Reddit's in transition, but they're part of a bigger category transition. So you've got Reddit, right? And they're basically built on anarchy in terms of these forums can run wild and the site grew through that wildness. And then earlier in the program, Mike, you mentioned the incredible customer satisfaction with Facebook, for instance, or I shouldn't say incredible, but improving customer satisfaction. Then you look at Facebook's profits. Very impressive. You also mentioned Apple. one of the kings of closed systems, one of the most profitable companies in the world. And I'm sort of connecting the dots between open systems versus closed systems. And Reddit historically has been this wild, wild west open system. And it's hurt them now in terms of their corporate culture, in terms of their talent. And also think in terms of their finances going forward.
Yeah, and to state that in another way, I think the very nature of Reddit, all the things that are great about Reddit are the very things that make it very, very difficult to monetize.
Right.
The community doesn't want monetization. They don't want full screen ads, interstitial ads. They don't want, heavy marketing. They don't want any of that stuff. They want a free, open platform where they can say whatever they want. And that's very, very difficult to monetize. And so we'll see how they do going forward. There's also another thing. I don't know if you want to talk about this. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Google+. I think you are as well. And, of course, we're on other social networks as well. I know you're active on Twitter and Facebook as well. But there's yet another round of Google+ is dying flying around because yesterday, as we announced on the show, they removed the requirement to use a Google+ login for YouTube. And I'm in the middle of a column on this, and I'm having a lot of fun writing it. It's just that whole logical strain is completely broken. You have two things here. You have Google, and here's what I'm thinking about the commentary on Twitter mostly. You have Google+, which is its own thing. And then you have a strategy that was associated with Google+, that was from the very beginning, where Google+ was going to be the centerpiece of everything. It was going to be integrated with everything. And they came right out of the gate with integrating Hangouts. They had integrated photo tools, okay? They've now taken those out gradually. First, they took out Hangouts, then they took out the photo tools. Now they're disintegrating the integrations with YouTube and the Play Store and all these things. So what Google is rolling back is the strategy of radical integration, right? That doesn't mean they're killing Google+. Like the fact that you need a YouTube Google+ login to get into YouTube had nothing to do with Google+ and what it's like to use Google+, other than the fact that the trolling culture of YouTube came washing in when they first did that. But it's really, those are completely. Nothing is being taken away from Google+ just because the radical integration policy, which was a terrible idea, is being fixed. So anyway,
and this is part of a bigger industry trend, Mike. It parallels what's going on at Microsoft. In years past under Steve Ballmer, Office was for Windows. And yeah, there was the Mac version, of course, we all know it. But think of how late Microsoft was to the iOS and Android world in so many ways. And everything was always coupled to Windows. And even new brands like the Azure Cloud was originally the Windows Azure Cloud, just because they wanted to lock things and integrate things with Windows and Active Directory, and the list goes on. Fast forward to the current CEO over there, and Microsoft has completely changed and has really decoupled and gone cross-platform. And I think it's a similar story over at Google. You can't handcuff your other services and limit them to benefit an overall platform. You've got to decouple things these days and let the consumer decide what they want.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think that Google is doing the right thing. The policy of radical integration was a bad policy. The policy of a real names policy was a bad policy. They fixed that. They're fixing the integration thing, and they're getting their whole situation, the whole relationship of their social network to their other products. They're getting it right. That's what they're doing. They're fixing what's broken, and I love to see it. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll have my column out there in a day or two. So we'll see how that's received on Twitter. In news you can lose, a composer named Sonia Belosova and a filmmaker named Tom Gray are honoring the 30th anniversary of the Mario game franchise by creating a Mario medley. And here you can listen to it on a piano designed after the original Nintendo by Megan Burns. Best of all, they're going to give away this piano when their YouTube subscriber number reaches 1 million. All subscribers are eligible to win. Their YouTube channel is called Player Piano. Let's listen to the Mario medley. You like the classics, Joe?
I do like the classics. So whether it's Atari or Nintendo, I love the classics there. But you know, Mike, when you were bringing up the story, I was reminded of something that's not really related, but in my world, it is related. And that's the fact that Bugs Bunny just turned 75. And so you look at some of these classic characters out there, whether they were originally animated or totally digital. I love looking back and maybe even scoring a piano on the way if I can.
I subscribe for that very reason. That's the good news. The bad news is that they've got a long way to go. Right now that they're in the 80,000 range. So they've got 900 and something thousand subscribers left to go, but I added my subscription and I'm doing what I can. So yeah, and I have to admit I'm a huge Bugs Bunny fan as well. They don't make them like that anymore. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Kevin Elgin. Yeah, he's my son, who posted this picture on Google+. I added this because it's such a great picture, and it's a picture of Joe Panettiere. And he's catching up with Tech News Today while on a trip to Israel. And here he is in a random cafe in the Jaffa flea market. There it is. This was taken this morning, our time. It was later in the day there in Israel. And there's Joe Panettiere. That's last week's show. He's like a week behind.
Yeah, how long is he in Israel, Mike?
He's been there for a few days. He was in Jordan before that. He's taken a trip there with his wife, and they're really enjoying it. This is the second time I think he's been to Israel, but the first time he's been to Tel Aviv, which of course has a thriving tech scene. So he's probably checking that out as well. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup or your laptop or your caffeinated beverage. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Joe Panettiere, thank you so much for joining us as co-anchor today. It's always great on Tuesdays. I'm getting a lot of fan mail telling me that Joe is great. So I'd love to hear that.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'll thank my entire family for sending that in to you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I told your mother already, you know, you don't need to keep sending email. I get it. No, so you've got a lot of fans out there, and I really appreciate it, and we will see you next week.
Fantastic, Mike. Take care. Thanks for having me. And Jason, take care as well.
All right. Bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today by going to twit.tv/TNT. And if you're ever near Petaluma, California, come in and watch us as part of our studio audience. You can also check out some Lagunitas. And if you come in, I will tell you about a beer place that's near Lagunitas that's much better than Lagunitas. You can send email to tickets@twit.tv before you come in. You can also join our Google Plus community. Yeah, I'm not dead. You can search Google Plus for Tech News Today, and you can follow me on Google Plus at +Mike Elgin. Don't miss our other Tech News show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight, and that is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name's Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.